Hi everyone, TJ Mac Vintage Cards here, and today I'm excited to show off a few new cards in my collection. But before I do that, for those who watch my channel or are new to my channel, I like to add cards to my collection that really fit in with the purpose of my overall collection, which is just showing off cards that are beautiful. I have some nostalgic connection to them, or just really show off my appreciation for sports history. So these two cards that I'm showing today, first is a 68 Topps Bob Gibson, which I've had in my collection for a while, and I actually showed this on a video several months ago with the 68 Topps Denny McLain, and I was highlighting the outstanding season that those two pitchers had that year. And now next to Bob Gibson is the Steve Carlton from 1973 Topps. I have not shown this channel or this card on my channel before, but it is a card I've had in my collection for a number of years. And I got these two cards together today because it highlights really two of the special pitching seasons since the dead ball era for sure that show off some of the highest wins above replacement level performances by a pitcher. And if anybody doesn't know, wins above replacement is a statistic that measures a player's performance against a replacement level player, which would be just like a entry-level major league type player. So for Bob Gibson, for example, 1968, his wins above replacement was 11.2. So him being on that team added 11 wins to that team. Now that is certainly one of the higher ones of all time, but it ranks 51st. Compared to next to him is Steve Carlton, his 1972 season, which he won 27 games with a 1.98 ERA on a team that only won 59 games, ranks 28th all-time with 12.1 wins above replacement. Now, Gibson, you might ask, well, he had the lower ERA, and he also had a lot of strikeouts that year. He did not win the pitching Triple Crown, though, because he did not lead the league in wins. He only had 22 wins. But with that 1.12 ERA, you would think that he would have ranked higher. But if you look at the Major League average that year for ERA, it was only 2.98 in 1968, which is very, very low. And that has to do with the fact that they had an expanded strike zone that year where it would be below the knees or right up to the shoulder level, which really added to a pitcher's advantage. And they also raised the mound that year, which gave the pitchers an advantage as well when they're coming in with their different pitches. So there was advantages certainly to the pitchers in 68 that other pitchers in other seasons were not afforded. Now, Gibson was the best certainly of all those pitchers that year, but his season by wins above replacement standards was not better than Steve Carlton. Now, the card that I'm going to show now is actually the highest wins above replacement for any pitcher outside of the dead ball era. So here I have the 1984 Topps traded Dwight Gooden, and it was in 1985 that Gooden had the greatest season outside of the dead ball era when measured by wins above replacement. He had a 12.2 WAR that season. He won the Major League Triple Crown with 24 wins, a 1.53 ERA, and a National League leading 268 strikeouts. So he won the Major League Triple Crown. So he actually led the majors in strikeouts as well. Now, this was against a league ERA of 3.59. So I said when Bob Gibson had his 1.12 ERA, the league average was 2.98. When Dwight Gooden had his 1.53 ERA, the league average was 3.59. So he averaged 2 runs less than the rest of the league. He was only 20 years old at the time. He was the youngest 20-game winner in baseball history. And there's just so much more about him that year. When Gooden was removed from the mound mid-inning only twice all year, can you believe that? And never when trailing. He took the ball into the ninth inning 18 times in his 35 starts that season, and he finished the inning every single time while allowing 1 run for a ninth inning ERA of .50. And he only allowed 1 player that year. He pitched 28 innings in his 4 losses, during which his team scored a total of 1 run in his 4 losses. So he finished 24-4. He lost just once in his final 25 starts. And for a true appreciation of his mastery, as I flip over and show the back of the card, just look what he did against the Chicago Cubs, who were the defending National League East champions. Gooden started 5 games against the Cubs. He beat them every time, each time with a complete game. His 5 complete game wins against the Cubs are the most by any pitcher in the last 61 years. Chicago scored only 5 earned runs in 5 games against Gooden that year. And it was a veteran infielder, Larry Boa, that said of those 1985 Cubs, when he was released from them in August, he said a week later he joined the Mets and told the Mets this: Dwight has been tipping his pitches all year. Every time you threw a fastball, you lift your left index finger off your glove, and every time you throw a curveball, you keep your index finger on your glove. We had every one of your pitches tagged. We knew what you were going to throw. That's how good Dwight Gooden was in 1985. The Cubs knew what pitch was coming, and they still could not get him out of the game, much less beat him in 5 tries. Love having this card in my collection. It's a nice, beautiful PSA 8. It was one of those holy grail cards I had as a kid. I think this card just goes so nice with this 1968 Topps Tom Seaver. These were the Mets' young guns at the time. Unfortunately, for Gooden, it didn't work out as well as it did for Seaver. Both did win a World Series, of course, but Dwight Gooden finished his career with a 194 and 112 record and a 3.51 ERA. Never could replicate his early success. He got injuries, got involved with drugs, where Tom Seaver finished with 311 wins and a 2.86 ERA. So just love this Tom Seaver card. I've had this one in my collection for many years. Just a beautiful example of a second-year Seaver with the rookie trophy on the front of it. Just love these 2 cards next to each other. Just seeing these Mets youngsters with just so much ahead of them in their future. And Dwight is a little bit of a what could have been, unfortunately. Next card I'm going to show is this Terry Bradshaw rookie from 1971 Topps. And I showed this very, very early in my channel, so I don't know if everybody's even seen it. But he gets a bad rap because I think casual fans who don't know the history of football very well look at his 212 touchdowns and 210 interceptions and say he was overrated. Now, he's still 15th all-time in quarterback wins with 117, which is a really good measurement for a quarterback, just given their importance to a team. And he's 9th all-time in winning percentage with 677. Now, the game was a lot different when Bradshaw played, which is why he threw 210 interceptions. The vertical passing game was prevalent. Defenses could hit receivers right off the line, and quarterbacks, frankly, just took a lot of more chances than they do nowadays in the lower, with the higher percentage passes and the lower risk throws. Now, what I would say to anybody who says, well, Bradshaw had 210 interceptions, or Joe Namath had more interceptions than touchdowns, let me ask you this. Do you think Gale Sayers was overrated because he fumbled 34 times in just 68 games? Or the great Walter Payton, who fumbled 86 times in 190 games? That would mean Frank Gore is better if you use that as a measurement because he fumbled 46 times in just 241 games. Or how about Garrison Hurst, who fumbled just 28 times in 126 games? It's just you can't measure errors very well all the time to figure out how good a player was. And I hope that illustrates that for you because I think Payton and Gale Sayers, for that matter, are 2 of the greatest ever. So we just have to understand how the game was played at that time. And that's why I think Terry Bradshaw is somebody that I hold in very high esteem. He was a tough player and a gritty player, and he just found ways to win games. So he was the number 1 pick in 1970, so I'm going to place next to him this other card I just recently picked up, which is a PSA 7 Jim Plunkett. Beautiful card. Just look at the coloring on that card. Now, he's wearing his college all-star jersey, and they did that in the 72 Topps set, and I noted before that picker Jim S. pointed that out to me a while back, because you can see on this Lyle Alzado, he's got the same jersey on, even though he's on the Broncos. And you can see that throughout the 72 Topps set, where they would show players in the college uniform from that all-star game on some of the rookie cards. So now, Jim Plunkett is somebody that I've been reading a lot about lately. I watch a Sports Century on him, and both of his parents were blind. His mom was completely blind, and his father was legally blind. And they lived in extreme poverty growing up. He did excel at football and got a chance to play at Stanford University. And then what happened to him is they found a tumor in his neck, and if it was malignant, it would have ended his career. Fortunately, it was benign, and he was able to play after they removed it. He ended up winning the Heisman Trophy and then became the number 1 overall pick in the 1971 draft. But unlike Bradshaw, he played for a terrible New England Patriots team at the time. If you thought the Patriots were good in the 2000s, they were equally terrible in the early 70s. He was 23-38 as a starter, and then in 1976 he goes to the 49ers, his 2 mediocre seasons with them, finishing 11-15. he was pretty much left out there. Nobody wanted him until Al Davis took a chance on him in 1978. He did not play at all in the 78 season, played sparingly in 1979. Then in 1980, the new starter of the Oakland Raiders, Dan Pastorini, got hurt in the 5th game when he injured his leg. Then Plunkett gets his chance. He goes 9-2 that year, ultimately leading the Oakland Raiders to the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles. And then in 1983, he goes and quarterbacks the Raiders again to the Super Bowl over the heavily favored Redskins, and they just destroyed the Redskins. I remember that Super Bowl well in 1983. And he is the only quarterback eligible for the Hall of Fame who has won 2 Super Bowls as a starter but is not included in the Hall of Fame. And I think he's I wouldn't feel bad if he got in the Hall of Fame, but I don't know if his career numbers quite warrant it just because he played for some pretty bad teams. But in his 57 starts with the Raiders, he finished with a 38-19 record. So I really am a big Jim Plunkett fan. I love his story. I just love his grit and his never-give-up attitude, and just real pleased to add his card to my collection. And I got these 2 great #1 picks from the 1970 and 1971 drafts here. I thought I'd finish up with some hockey. I want to highlight a big trade that I wanted to have represented in my collection, one of the biggest trades in NHL history. It occurred in 1975 when the New York Rangers were cleaning house, and they had lost in the semifinal round playoffs to the Philadelphia Flyers in 1974. Then they inexplicably lost a first-round matchup with the neighboring New York Islanders in 1975. So management decided to clean house. They got rid of a lot of their good players. And with that, they traded Brad Park, and then this recent acquisition that I brought right here is Jean Rattel to the Boston Bruins, and these are their first cards on the Bruins for Phil Esposito from the Boston Bruins. And Esposito was one of the greatest players of that time. But what I like about this is that this trade involved 3 Hall of Famers. It was a jaw-dropping trade, and it really worked out well for the Bruins and not as good for the Rangers. Rattel and Park would go on to have many great years with the Bruins. Brad Park, for example, would finish top 2 for the Norris Trophy as the best defenseman a couple of times and would finish in the top 10 some other times. And Jean Rattel just continued performing well in his Hall of Fame career. Now, Esposito with the Bruins had 1,012 points in 625 games. When he went to the Rangers, he only had 402 points in 404 games. The Rangers did make a Stanley Cup in 79, but the Bruins actually went on to win 4 straight division titles in a row and won a couple Stanley Cups. So I wanted to highlight this trade because I just like to have things like this in my collection just to kind of note hockey history. And I like Jean Rattel, Esposito, and Park, all 3 of them. And I just like these cards from the 76 set. Just nice action shot of Rattel there skating up the ice. So that's all I have for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I appreciate everybody, and have a great weekend. And feel free, like I said, to always leave a comment. I always appreciate that and will respond. So thank you so much.